Hey, good morning, friends. How are you? I know we're a minute or two late this morning. We're having some connectivity issues here, so that might explain the different angle and the different angle of the dangle here and all that. So, good morning, everybody. Hey, Donna. Good morning. Vicky. Good morning to you. John. Good morning. Glad you're. Hope you're well. Hope things are going well there. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Hey, Sharon Landry. Glad you're here. Tina, how are you? I hope you're healing, honey. I hope you're doing all right. This Lyme stuff is the worst. I'll tell you what. I've been fighting with some stuff lately. Even though I think the Lyme is all gone, I think there's some residual stuff I've been fighting with too. I think of you often, and that it's awful. So, John, did you see Wednesday Wildlife Foes? How was that? Different. I was great. I know. I like that one. I love that. I love this discipline you've taken up of kind of seeing things in a of kind of always kind of looking for a different perspective on things or willfully changing your perspective. It's so critical. It's so critical, particularly in these days. It's such a beautiful discipline. Yeah, we got this. I'm with you, honey. That sounds good. Cecile, good morning to you. Great to see you the other day. You're looking great. Oh, so glad you're here and that you had it was a nice day out. But boo, it was hot though. That was some. Uh, Cecile was down at the dedication of the Fall River State Park Heritage Fall River Heritage State Park uh, Visitor Center, and got to see her down there, and it was really great. Then dedicated for Thomas Hubner. Vicky, your garden is having like that's so nice. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Yeah, this is such a beautiful time of year. Such a beautiful time. Although, man, it felt heavy this morning. Whew, the air was thick. Um, I am glad that it is good. So, all right, friends. I apologize for the minute or two late this morning. We are just we're doing all we can with our tech issues here. So, I beg your indulgence. So good morning. It is the 15th day of September, the middle of September, the Ides of September, if you will. Uh, um, and at another 11:11. And I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're a part of this journey. If you're new here, if you've been stalking around the edges, if you're catching us later, if you've been through on this journey now for nearly 20 months or whatever we're into, wherever you find yourself, however you find yourself, in whatever state you find yourself, in whatever place you find yourself, I am glad you are hearing my voice and you are here. That you're taking a moment to encounter something bigger than yourself, encounter something bigger than the simple worries of your day, encounter something bigger than the next ask, the next phone call, the next thing you can worry about, all of the things that are going on in your life. To take a moment and just breathe with a bunch of people who care about you, because that's who you're among right now. Even if you're catching this later, those who are saying good morning, we will pray for you and we will care for you and we will hold you up. So welcome. Today is the 15th day of September, and it is this afternoon and this evening. If you were to toddle up the hill here from my office up to Bethel Synagogue, which if you've never been to Bethel Synagogue, make a point of going. It is probably one of the more beautiful buildings within our city. It is one, and that's saying something in Fall River. There are beautiful buildings in this town, but the Bethel Synagogue is tremendously beautiful. You can go on their website and see some of that. But this is the most holy day of all the year. This is Yom Kippur. This is what is called the Day of Atonement, which is kind of hilarious. Like I always chuckle whenever I hear the Day of Atonement. Not because it's actually an extremely somber day, and it's actually so I want to talk a little bit about kind of what they'll be doing up there up the hill and some of their prayers and some of what they bring because I think it brings beauty to our discipline too. I don't know if you can just walk in, Vicky, but I know there's somebody there all the time. I think they have if you were to show up and hey, I would love to see the sanctuary. I think they'd be more than happy to avail you. So yeah, I think you can. I mean, not anytime obviously, but whatever their business hours are, I think. Hopefully, I'm not misspeaking on that, but we have the same level of hospitality. We have folks here who drop in to see our sanctuary as well, and we're happy to accommodate them. If not, you can check their website too, and I'm sure there's ways. But yeah, if you're ever up just poking around looking for something, it is a spectacular building, and it's there's so much beauty that it speaks to. But this day, Yom Kippur, is a day of it is called the Day of Atonement. Now, so now I want to talk about that. And I said it made me laugh, and here's why it makes me laugh. The word atonement, we are like, if you've ever kind of encountered the Christian Protestant Christianity at all, hopefully maybe you have. Hello, we're over here. Like that. If you've ever encountered any of that, what you encounter in that is that there's a lot of atonement theology sometimes that kind of and this word atonement actually comes from this guy Wycliffe. Now Wycliffe translates the Bible, and he's trying to come up with a word for a translation for this Hebrew word that's been translated into Greek, that he's trying to figure out a way to express this idea of putting humans and God together again in relationship, that have been separated in relationship and putting them back in relationship. And he comes up with this word kind of at one-ment, which is a lot of those transliterations aren't true, that they, that like to, to say, butterfly is not a dairy product. But in this case, it's true. Like it actually is that this word he was trying to come up with this idea, but it doesn't really cover that idea. But it got picked up by modern Judaism, which is the funny thing about this. They're talking about the Day of Atonement, and there's a day of covering, which is kind of a better term for what we're talking about. And this day, so but it ends up that they kind of end up using this word of at one-ment, this atonement word that was actually by a Christian that ended up using it, and in some ways they're kind of trying to get away from it. There's actually movements within Judaism to try and stop using the word because it doesn't really say because it doesn't really say, and even in Christianity it doesn't say. We think about atonement as we've been given all of these theological ideas about what atonement theology is, and it's really like and if you were to this is and some of this comes from Father Stephen Damick, who from the Lord of Spirits podcast, which I can't recommend enough. It's so much fun, but at least for me, if you want to be a theology geek. So, but he talks about the idea that atonement is actually this idea of it's actually covering is what we're talking about. Is this cover so that and he makes the joke. He says, that we should really stop talking about, like, locally there's an AC/DC cover band called Dirty Deeds, and that we should really not talk about them as a cover band. We should start talking about them as an atonement band, which I think is hilarious. Probably no one else does, but it's my stream, so sorry. That's as funny as I get today. But here's the thing: this whole journey that they've been on up the street, had really been a 10-day journey. That is, it starts with Rosh Hashanah, and the 10 days of awe, as they are described, and ends with Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is this day of atonement. It is this day of covering, of bridge building between the divine and the human. And it begins with this prayer. And it's not even really a prayer. It's called the Kol Nidra. And so at about 6:30 tonight, they will, and when the congregation gathers up there, they will begin this 24 hours, which they will fast, which they will pray. They'll begin this sacred period with this prayer, and it says this. And so I'm not going to talk about all of it today because that would be too long. But I just want to talk about this one little piece of how it begins and kind of how it ends, because really I think encapsulated within this is a beauty that we can resonate with, and that actually I think is a discipline and a reality that is powerful and important for us anytime. So I know we've got a little way we're kind of going a long way around the barn today, but hey, come on, stay with me. It'll be fun. So we come to this idea of the Day of Atonement, 10 days of awe, 10 days of prayer saying, 10 days of lifting up these days of awe, and in it is these three kind of things that they're called to do, called to repent, to pray, and to do charity, which is the idea of repairing the break. But the whole thing begins, that's what I started with the Kol Nidra. And the Kol Nidra begins, which is this moment of, and it's, again, not even really a prayer, it's like this legal declaration. And the legal declaration says this: in the tribunal of heaven and the tribunal of earth, in the councils of heaven and the councils of earth, to put it that way, by the permission of God, blessed be he, and by the permission of this holy congregation, we hold it lawful to pray with the transgressors. Well, now, that's a place to start, isn't it? This day of making things right with God, this day of coming into right relationship, this day of this day of preparing a place for God, because that's really what this work is about. It's about preparing a place for God in the life of the congregation and in the life of the person. So it's almost like somebody that's coming over to your house. If somebody, I remember once when my grandmother died. I remember the minister came over to our house. Now my grandmother was a part of the congregation there, up in Maine, but my parents had, other than being married in that church, I don't think they ever darkened the door there. They had very little use for church, and they really kind of look at me and try and figure out where they went wrong. But but the minister was coming over. And I remember this, and I remember it so succinctly because of the fact they cleaned the house. For people who had no use for church and little use for the minister, who are people who had no concept of that they should be they should necessarily entertain the holy outside of kind of what they wanted to do when they wanted to do it. And this isn't to criticize my folks. There's a lot of people like this. But it's to say, but I was amazed. I was amazed. Not because they cleaned the house. They at that point, anyway, they were in the habit of cleaning the house. It was that they made preparations for the man of God to arrive. Now, and they would never have thought of it that way. They would never have put it in such a sense. But on such a basic, on such a low, kind of crude level, it's in many ways what the Day of Atonement, what Yom Kippur is all about, is about on the most high level, about making a space in the Holy of Holies, making a space in the congregation, making a space in our own hearts and in our own minds for the divine to come to rest, for the divine to cover us over, for God's love and God's grace to be with us. So I'm going to use some terms that aren't Jewishy at this point, but that's okay. We're here. We're here together. We'll get through it. But it's this. But to think about this notion of the first thing that you do, when God is coming to the doorstep, the first thing that you do when Jesus says, "I stand at the door and knock," when the knocking starts, that even just like my folks who had no use for any of it, yet they still cleaned the house before the minister arrived. You begin the Day of Atonement. You begin Yom Kippur with those words that say, "It is lawful to pray with the transgressors." Because the very tribunal of heaven, the council of heaven, says so. This is the divine council. This is all the gods that sit in council. This is all the angels that sit in council with God, and they say, it's lawful to pray with the transgressors. Now, Yom Kippur in the Jewish tradition is the highest attended service. It's the most holy service. And tonight will be their big night up the street. Tonight's service and tomorrow's service will be the most attended services in all around the world for the Jewish tradition. And part of it is based out of this knowledge that no matter how secular you might be, we talk about, you hear that term thrown around, secular Judaism. I don't know what it means. I don't need to know what it means. But what we hear that term thrown around that, when we talk about Christmas and Easter Christians too, but this is even different than that, because this is really a sense of, because the holiday begins with this invitation, with this declaration that it is lawful to worship with the transgressors. That no matter what you've done, no matter where you've been, no matter how horrible, no matter how evil, no matter how much you've fallen down, no matter how much you've missed the mark, there's a place for you here. It's lawful for you. It is. When things in Judaism say lawful, they're talking about good, like that it's good, that we need to do this. Carl Jung had this quote, which I just love, and it never escapes me. It seems to be one of the, I don't know if you have this, but there are quotes that follow you, that they kind of plague you, that you'll see them written or they'll pop up in different things you're reading. And this is one of those for me. And I think it is so, and it's so critical, I think, for our age that we're in right now, but also for our lives of kind of cleaning our house. And that instinct that comes with that. Not that we're going to get all the dust bunnies. That's not the point. But the idea that we might be about some preparation. And Jung's quote goes this way. It says, "That which we do not bring to consciousness appears in our lives as fate." Oh, that one always gets me. Like, oh, that which we do not bring to consciousness appears in our lives as fate. Think about that. The things that we aren't willing to face, the things we aren't willing to look at, the things that we aren't willing to encounter, the things that we would just rather not, the transgressions of our days, those transgressions, there's a place for them in our consciousness. There's a place for them in our congregation. This is the declaration of the Kol Nidre, as it's at the beginning of the service for Yom Kippur, is that. And what then is the beginning? And I think it speaks to what Jung is talking about, is that if we don't stand before God with our transgressions, and just whatever they are, And it doesn't mean, and simply say that they're there and maybe make some attempts to clean them up, but or not. But to simply acknowledge that we're aware of the fact that there are these places in which we've missed the mark. There are these places in which we've been imperfect. There are these places in which, and that God's love comes to cover that. Like if we talk about this, the Day of Atonement is really the day of covering. And God comes, and not just to cover it like a bar tab, but to truly take over it, so that all the gnarly, all the nasty, all the hard stuff, all the disappointment, all the grief, all the pain in it is covered with a peace that surpasses all understanding, to use Paul's term, with a joy that is unending, like a mountain spring that will not go dry. These biblical images come to us because they are this notion of what it is that but if we don't ever open to them, if we don't ever give ourselves permission, and this is the power of ritual. This is the power of the ritual that they'll do up the hill today, but this is the power of the ritual that we do every week as we approach God, and as we approach our worship space. And all of this comes that we might, that we might, as they say, have our names written in the book of life. Again, numerous times, and nobody really knows where it comes from. A lot of people think it comes from the exile in Babylon in the 6th century, but nobody's really sure where it comes from. But throughout Bible, there is this overarching theme that begins to come out of this book of life, in which we are recorded, in which all of our deeds are recorded, everything we know, everything we've been, everything we've thought, everything we are. I mean, it's interesting when you listen to near-death experiencers talk, that cross-culturally, no matter what age, no matter where they are, there is some kind of life review. You know, this notion that, well, somebody's writing it around somewhere. That there is this that when we talk about people who've died and come back, who've had a near-death experience, who've had this experience of their heart stopped beating, they stopped breathing for a number of minutes, and then they were revived by some sort of medical intervention. Often, those folks that report something, not everybody reports something, but those folks that do, often report that there's some kind of life review. So I find that fascinating, because we have this deep theme in the biblical story all the way from Genesis to Revelation. But our Hebrew brothers and sisters, it's well entrenched, and that the goal of Yom Kippur is that at the end of this, you'll have your name written in the book of life. In fact, if you want to wish someone well in Yom Kippur, that's what you say. You say, may you be inscribed in the book of life for good. Maybe you be inscribed in the book of life for good. And then they pray the high prayer, the Shema, which is all about the unity of the people and God. It's about the unity of God with the people. So it's the whole journey is this journey that brings them to the great founding prayer of Judaism, which is the prayer of unity with God and the people. The God and people are in it together, and that there's nothing holding them apart. And they blow the shofar, which is this trumpet made from a goat's horn. And they blow this from a ram's horn, and they blow this trumpet, and that is the end of Yom Kippur. And that will happen. It will begin about 6:30 tonight and go through all the way till next. Now there's a whole lot more that goes on in here, but I wanted to invite you to this notion in these days of what we can bring that will put humans and God together again as one. What is it What is it that's in our little consciousness that we don't want to talk about, that we don't want to bring up, that we're afraid, that we're reluctant, that we think will, that would make us seem bad or dirty or wrong or broken or cruel, whatever those things are. Because it's my belief, beyond what Judaism says, beyond what the rituals of Yom Kippur say, is that when we lift up to the one who made us that which is the worst of us, the most difficult of us, the most painful of us, the most maybe the most confusing of us, maybe the things that we carry that we just don't know what to do with. When we lift them up to God, we're not cast aside, we're not cast asunder, we're not cast out, we're actually cast in. That the whole way that the Kol Nidre begins, the Kol Nidre prayer begins the Yom Kippur journey, is that we pray, it is lawful, it is good that to pray with the transgressors, that we bring all the transgressors of our hearts and we bring them into the light of the divine as well. And we let them, the fact that we're now conscious of them and that God is now conscious of them, although God never was without knowing of them in the first place. But that when we bring them into this relationship, the very things that we think are going to break the relationship, the very things that we think are going to separate the relationship, the very things that we think are going to keep us from the one who made us, are actually the things that are going to put us back together again. That are going to be the adone-ment, the atoning of it. They're the things, because there is a love, there is a grace, there is a goodness that covers over. Again, like a cover band, that there's a good, that can cover over these things. Not really like a cover band, but I'm just kidding. But that there's enough there to bridge the gap that you perceive and that I perceive, and that the gap was never really there in the first place. So, my friends, it's my hope that you will take whatever it is on this Yom Kippur, on this Day of Atonement, on this Day of Covering, and if you have to repent, if you have to turn yourself around, turn yourself around. If you need to talk with God about it, talk with God about it, pray about it. If you need to repair something that you've broken, repair it. If you need to call somebody, you need to ask for forgiveness, do the things you need to do. You need to make an offering, whatever it is that you feel called to, and all of that. But beyond all of that, know that God is showing up in your life. God is showing up. God's coming to dwell with you. And that we might, in our meager little ways, but deep within us, deep within us, have the instinct to gather and clean and purify and make right the things that are made wrong, that the world has made wrong. And that so that we might know that our names might be inscribed in the book of life. That we might, when we review our life, if we were just going to sit down with our own big picture book right now and review the work of our days, all of them, not just the ones we'd like to see, but that we can inscribe it for goodness, inscribe it for grace. Because there's nothing in that book. There is no picture, no image, no self-condemnation that is so great that it cannot be healed by the love of God for you and with you. That's my hope for you, friends, on this Yom Kippur, that you, and maybe it's just it comes down to this: you let yourself, by bringing forth all your prayers of transgressions, be inscribed in the book of life for good. All right, friends, that's my hope for you today. On this the 15th day of September. I'm so glad you're all with me. Karen, glad you made it in. Bonnie, glad you're here. Amy, you're here. Priscilla, good morning to you. I hope our stream held up. I hope you're well, and we'll pick it up tomorrow with another 11:11. Peace and grace, my friends.